feedback. The topic this week is feedback. We all need feedback. Leaders need feedback. We all need feedback so we can learn to improve, so that we can learn to develop ourselves, and so that we can give feedback to help our employees develop and grow. It's not always comfortable receiving feedback. It's not always comfortable giving feedback, but it's such a powerful and important part of developing yourself as a leader and developing your team. So that's what we're going to explore in this episode. Talking of feedback, please give us feedback below in the comments. Please subscribe to the Leadership Detectives. Please let us know what you think. Please give us a thumbs up. So thank you for listening again. Let's jump straight into understanding more about giving, receiving, the whys, the whens, and the how of great feedback. Hope you enjoy. And we're live. Welcome back to the Leadership Detectives. Thank you for joining us. Feedback, the food of champions, is what Ken Blanchard says. We love it, we hate it, we love good feedback, we don't like bad feedback, we might like it sometimes, we don't like it other times. So feedback's what we're going to talk about today and how powerful it is for you as a leader. So Albert, welcome, how you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, good to talk to you. And you're right, we've touched on this topic in a couple of other videos, right, where we've kind of just got on the edge of it and said we'll come back to it. So now we can focus on it in this next kind of 20-25 minutes. And
it's one of those really uncomfortable topics, I think, feedback as well. And personally, I have to be honest, I've never been great at asking for and receiving feedback as a leader.
Yeah.
Or actually in many areas. And I think part of that is not because you don't want to learn how you can get better. Part of it is because you don't want to hear what what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
There's a weakness there or an ego thing there. And I think, I've always thought, well, people can have their opinion, but I know I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. I have to be honest, when we talked about, should we do this topic? I'm quite excited, right? Because I think there's so much material here. I think there's something we can really give to our audience to help them be more effective and get a better effectiveness and efficiency out of them being a leader and working with their teams.
Yeah.
And I think when you've practiced it a bit and you get some good successes, then I think you'll start feeling a bit better about it. It's one of those bits of medicine that you don't really want to take, but when you start feeling some successes from it, and what's a success? An effective conversation, feedback conversation with someone that delivers the result you're looking for, improved performance or reinforcing good performance or whatever, right? So I think that's something that you need to practice it.
Yeah, well, and as a leader, there's two elements to this, isn't there? There's the element of seeking and receiving feedback from your employees, from your managers, from your peers, from your customers. And then there's being able to give effective feedback and make people feel comfortable and about effective feedback.
Ooh, what? People telling me about me? Oh, I was going the other way. I was just giving feedback. Oh, gosh.
And why? Yeah. And would you go and ask an employee for feedback about you as a manager, about you as a business? Actually, have you ever done that? Have you ever gone to one people in your team and said, how am I doing as a manager?
Yeah, I mean, I joke about the fact about not wanting to receive it, right? Because actually two things. One is, I remember, in fact, I asked my management team, something wasn't going well for me, and I got someone to go and do an anonymous survey and bring back to me feedback about my style and what I was doing. That was one thing. The other thing is I was a mentor to a number of junior people, and even, maybe first line managers. At the end of that session, I would always ask them for feedback on me, not just about the session we just had, but overall, what do you think about me? Because that's an opportunity. What do they say, right, Neil? Feedback is a gift, right? Feedback is a gift if you want to receive it correctly. Why would I miss the opportunity for someone to give me some feedback? It's just, the trick in this as well, do you feel confident they're being honest and not saying what you want to hear? I don't want people to tell me what I want to hear. I want to know the truth.
Right.
Personal view when I'm looking at my own leadership style.
And it's you've got to be, I think you've got to be courageous enough and confident enough in yourself to receive feedback. And what I find really interesting, there's a lot of machismo out there in management, especially in sales management and sales leadership. And those are the guys that, you know, I don't need feedback. I'm not going to ask for feedback. That's weakness doing that. Actually, you're just scared about what they're going to say.
Yeah.
That's why you're avoiding, because you're scared.
Yeah.
And I was guilty. By the way, I was guilty of that. I didn't want to hear necessarily what people's feedback was. When I'm a speaker, when I come off stage and I say, please give me some feedback. Actually, what I want to hear is how great I was.
Yeah.
I don't want people to say, well, you could have done this bit better. But I do want that, but it's difficult to hear sometimes unless you're in the right place. And that's something we need to talk about in this is, why should we give feedback or receive feedback?
Yeah.
We do it, and how should we do it? I think those are all really important points.
I mean, look, just a couple of stats that I've got, because you and I have done a bit of research on this, right? So a couple of stats that I've got, and it doesn't mean it's perfect, guys, but it's feedback. It's information we've got from places that we've looked at. One of the things I heard was 26% of the people that have been involved in feedback conversations have said they were really, really happy that they did that, right? Now, is that a good enough number? I think that's not a good enough number, right? I'd expect more people to say that.
So 26% said they were happy in a feedback conversation
to have gone through that experience. However, one of the bits of survey I did, one of the surveys I found, 70% of the people said at the end of the exercise, they were either upset or crying. Now, I don't think, guys, that's a reflection on giving and receiving feedback. I think that's a reflection on the effectiveness of how well it was done, because feedback is really good for people. And if 70% of people are being left with a bad experience, you and I can hopefully change some of that here today. Okay. That's what I'd like to believe.
So an important point there is how and when, because those people feel bad about it if they're receiving it at the wrong time and they're receiving it in the wrong way. I just want to spend a couple of minutes on why feedback is so important.
Yeah.
And so again, let me just pull up some stats I pulled off a survey that was done. So 60% of employees felt that something was holding them back at work. So there was something that could be improved in the business if only they were asked. So one of the reasons to ask for feedback is because it will improve your business.
Yeah.
It will improve not just you as a leader, but your business. So that's the first piece. Then a Harvard Business Review, 72% of employees said they thought their performance would improve if their managers would provide corrective feedback on how they might be able to do their job better.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really key. And the other thing that I thought was fascinating, and this is really important to remember when we delve into this, is 57%, 60% of people preferred corrective feedback, so feedback on what they could do better, than praise and recognition.
Yes. Yeah.
So that people don't just want to hear what a great job they're doing and have lots of strokes.
Yeah.
They want to know, how can I improve as an individual?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that really good points actually, Neil. And I think I want to come back to one of the things you said before that, where you said about the right feedback at the right time.
Yeah.
Guys, you've got to choose your moment, right? When somebody's at your desk crying because something's going bad in their life, this is not the time to go into conversations about how they can do better in their job, right? Just as an extreme example, you've got to pick the right moment, the right environment, right? Is it in your office? It's not in an open forum, right? You've got to think about this and be sensitive, because you can be so effective with an outcome if you get it right.
So if we know why get feedback is really important for a leader as a business and to grow, actually just on the word grow for a sec, I think the reason people like receiving corrective feedback, because it helps them grow, helps them get better, helps them improve, is when you look at the 6 human needs, one of the 6 human needs is our need to grow. It's one of the key core. We want to grow as individuals. We want to improve.
Yeah.
And one of the fastest ways of improving is through receiving feedback from people that we respect and want to receive feedback from.
Yeah.
Which I think is really so. So the reasons why I don't think anybody would dispute that feedback is really important. I guess it's how and when and who that's going to be really key here.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the 6 human needs, right? Because if I'm not wrong, one of the other ones is about feeling significant.
Yeah.
So that being the case, I mean, Neil and I have discussed here, you know, what are the reasons to give feedback? And for me, at the very highest level, I mean, I think we can go deeper, but at the very highest level, there's probably 2 reasons. One is to increase someone's performance, improve someone's performance or behavior. The other one is to reinforce where they're doing something well.
Yeah.
So one is to improve, the other one is to reinforce if they're doing it well. So if that's where this feeling for significance comes in. If someone's doing a really good job and they're making a great impact, tell them about it. Mm-hmm. By the way, they might not know. And what would be a real shame is they stop doing something that's having a great impact because in their head, they might think it's not working. Reinforce it. That's good. Feedback is not just about having a disciplinary conversation. That's not what feedback is, guys.
And it's interesting you say it, right? Because when I talk to people in the companies I work with and leaders I coach, and you talk about feedback and when to give feedback and how to give feedback, typically the answer I get is, well, yeah, we do that in the annual review. Once a year, we sit down and we go through a personal development plan and that's what they think feedback is, because it's an HR thing, feedback, isn't it? It's not something that I should do as a manager. It's an HR thing, you know. It's not anything to do with the performance of the business.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Interesting. One of the things I saw, Neil, was I looked at somebody who was talking about how you receive feedback.
Okay.
And getting your mind into a shape. And here's a distinction, right? That feedback can either come into you as a sponge, or it can come into you as a strainer. Mm-hmm. So it can come into you as a sponge, and you can absorb it, and it can eat away at you, and it can weigh you down and get heavy and sluggish. Or you can let it go through you, take what you need from it, use what you need from it, and then let it go.
So a strainer. So you
strainer.
Take out the really golden nuggets. Like that would it. It's like panning for gold.
There you go.
And you got the golden nuggets. Yeah, so the golden nuggets of feedback filtered out of all the crap you hear.
I'm writing it down, mate. I'm
going to put that quote on Google. That'll be my quote then. So, but it does. It is like that, isn't it? Because when we get feedback, you know, we're all human beings, and naturally, when we get feedback, the first thing we feel, even if you've asked for feedback, and I'm 100% guilty of this, even if I've said, please, can you tell me what I could have done better in this course or this speech or this coaching? The first thing that happens is I start feeling defensive, or I start trying to justify it. You know, I'll start going, yeah, the reason I did that was this. Actually, it doesn't matter. Someone observed that, or that's feedback. Absorb that feedback. Don't be defensive. Don't justify. Well, it's natural, but it's not helpful.
It's interesting, actually, because it's human nature, isn't it? Our human nature is to defend, right? That's our first human nature. I don't know why, but I guess it's just naturally the way that we are. So that's worth thinking about.
It is. And so let's talk about when we give feedback. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, there's lots of different scenarios where you might give feedback. You know, there's an emergency situation where you might give immediate direct feedback. That's different to nurturing feedback, growth feedback. So when you think about when to give feedback, what would your advice be to the audience on that?
I think you've got to, let's say it's because it's towards directing improving performance. It needs to be timely. If you know the performance you're trying to address is something, it's a behavior trait. So someone in a certain situation is exhibiting a certain behavior that is not healthy for them or for the business or for your team or whatever. It's got to be timely. There's no point in coming back to them in 7 days' time and saying, well, last Wednesday, this happened, right? So as timely as it can be after it's happened, because it's fresh in your mind, I think that's quite important to do. But it also has to be at a point at which you've got enough evidence that it needs feeding back on. If it only happened once, don't get carried away, right? People are not perfect. Sometimes they have a bad day. That's okay. But if they're starting to exhibit a behavior, I mean, let's pick a behavior. They're losing the plot in a meeting, right? They're not listening to their colleagues, and I just want my point of view to go across. You need to talk to somebody about that and help them understand that listening is as important as just speaking.
Yeah, and so it's an interesting point about so doing it reasonably close. If it's a corrective thing, if it's something that needs dealing with, having enough evidence of it, so not just beating people up every time you see something.
Yeah.
But I think there's lots of, as I said earlier, there's emergency type feedback. There's that kind of, I need to just talk to you about something I observed.
Yeah.
And then there's the more structured, maybe it's a monthly meeting where you have an opportunity to feedback on how someone's done, quarterly, or when someone sits down with you. Someone might sit down with you as a leader and go, can you just give me some feedback on how I'm doing?
Yeah.
How am I doing? What could I do better, boss?
Yeah.
So, and by the way, leaders should be doing that all the time.
But that's a really important thing, actually, Neil. That's saying, look out for this stuff, guys, right? Because you'll spot things and you'll notice things. Look out for this stuff, and look out for it in a way that you want to find a way to give this gift to your people when you get the chance. Just as an aside, I don't know why it came into my head, but I remember one of the teams I took over, the first thing I did, I sat down with them in a team meeting, and they didn't know me. So I'm the new guy in there and everybody's very deadpan. And I said at the end of the meeting, by the way, guys, I'm watching you. I'm watching you. And they went, what? And I said, because I want to find opportunities to give out recognition and awards to everyone in my team. In the branch, there are awards that go up every month. We're winning those awards, guys. So I'm watching you. And they loved it, right? First of all, you can imagine they were dead. But like I said, you got to spot it. As a leader, it's your responsibility to find those opportunities to feedback to people if they can do better, or to reinforce when they're doing well.
So the when is really, there's lots of different whens. You've just got to manage the right time, but the when has got to be when the person is ready to receive it as well.
Yeah.
It's really key. If you are not ready to receive feedback, you won't.
That's a good point, actually, Neil. Did you want to talk about any kind of techniques on how you deliver feedback?
Yeah, so we'll do the how next. So we kind of talked about the why we're doing it. So we'll talk about the how. But I think that, so this is why, as you said, if someone's in a stress state because they're angry about something or something's not worked well, and you want to then go and give them feedback about a spreadsheet they didn't fill in properly, or that you want to give them feedback about an interaction, maybe you got to pick your moment. And set it up so they know this is an opportunity for feedback. So let's talk about the how. What advice would you give on how to give feedback?
Well, the reason I asked that just when we were having that conversation there is because part of the how is it should start with a question to them that says, do you have a minute? And I've got a conversation I need to have with you. Is it good to have it now? So that comes back not only to the timing, but also the how. You've got to open with an invitation to them that you need to have that conversation. So you let them know, first of all, you're checking if they've got time. They might be running off to something really important and you want to sit down and have a 10-minute conversation, right? So it's important you ask if they've got time. The other one is to say, I've got something we need to talk about, something I've noticed. Are you willing to have that conversation now? Right. So I think it's important you open that. Now, if they say no, okay, fine. Right. They've closed the door on the fact that you wanted to make it a feedback conversation. But you have to say to them, in that case, there has to be another time because I do need to deliver some information to you and I do need to have a conversation with you.
So it's interesting. One of the things in coaching is you ask permission to share feedback. Would it be okay if I share some feedback with you on what I just observed? Would it be okay if I share with you, this? And because that sets you up psychologically for, I'm going to receive feedback, because the person can either say yes or no. Most of the time they say yes. Some of the time might say, actually, no, I'm not ready for it. So then you can say, okay, when would be a good time to give you some feedback if you'd like it? So I think asking permission to give feedback, or setting that container, that setup, is quite important.
So what do we do? I understand there might be a situation, say, no, not now. What if they say no? I've got some feedback I need to give you. Is that okay? No.
So I think we're talking about two different types of feedback. So what you're describing, I think, is you're doing something wrong. I need to tell you so that you can do it right next time. So that's like corrective feedback, I think they call that.
Yeah.
Then there's improvement feedback. How can I improve?
Yeah.
So I observe this in you, or I see this happening. Can I give you would you like some feedback on how you could improve your interaction with people, or how you could improve as a manager? Or and they might say no. So fine. If you don't want the feedback, it's fine, because feedback's only someone's observation and opinion. It doesn't mean it's right.
So that's a good point, right? So there's a distinction here between feedback that you think will help improve their performance and help them as well as help us. But if that borders on a behavioral thing that is not acceptable, that is getting to a conversation which is, I'm going to use the word, it's a bit strong, but that's a disciplinary conversation.
Correct.
Don't avoid that conversation because someone says, no, I'm not willing to have it. Sorry, that is not a choice. So just get that distinction right.
Yeah, because this conversation is all about feedback to improve.
Yes.
It's about growth.
Yes.
And so on the how, one of the things you and I were taught when we first became managers was the shit sandwich approach.
Yeah.
It was, you're really, really good in here. I really admire what you do in this area of your job. You're really not doing so well here.
Yeah.
But, in this area, you're doing really well. So you tell them something good, you tell them something bad, you tell them something good. And that was 30 years ago, probably we went through that kind of training. Personally, I think that's outdated now.
Yeah.
And everybody sees it coming.
Yeah.
They know if you're being praised, okay, the shit bit's coming in a second.
Yeah. I think the other thing, guys, is be careful. If you go down that road, there's another trait that I've seen in this. And that is that if you're feeding back on a behavioral thing, you then might make an excuse for it. So look, let's pick a really trivial thing, right? I need to talk to you about the fact that I've noticed, Neil, that you're not getting into the office, at a reasonable time, and we've got a team call every morning at 9 o'clock, and you're always late onto the team call. So I'd appreciate if you can get here a bit early. But I understand if you get caught in traffic, because I get caught in traffic sometimes as well. And these things happen, right? You've got to take the kids on the school run and everything. But don't do that, guys, because you've now given them, it's almost like, why are you telling them? Because you've just said, I see all the reasons it's happened. So be careful, because we do that because we start feeling guilty when we're giving feedback that seems harsh. It's not harsh, right? You're dealing with facts, right? You're dealing with facts and behavior. Be really careful if you're dealing with opinion.
So so it's interesting because what you've gone back to is kind of the disciplinary corrective stuff.
Yeah.
And because I know naturally, most people don't like giving feedback. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, said, I really struggle giving feedback to my peers. And they don't struggle telling them when they've done a good job. What they mean is they struggle giving feedback when things don't go right.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the most important things I'll probably say in this whole session is the most important thing about giving feedback. It has to come from a place of love.
Yeah.
If it comes from a place of hatred, if it comes from a place of, I want to beat you up, I want to tear you down, I want to make you feel bad, then it's going to be received in that way.
Yeah.
If it comes from a place of love, as in you care about this person, you really want to see them improve, you really want to see them do better, it'll be received in that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. I've not thought about it before. I didn't think about it in any of my research, actually, but think about it as a sports coach.
Yeah.
A sports coach is feeding back all the time. If your sports coach didn't feed back to you, what would be their point in being there? They're telling you things that I see you didn't do that as well as you could have done. You could have done this better, right? Does anybody see their sports coach as being a bad person? No, you're there improve my performance? Because you can see something I can't see, maybe. I've not thought about that as an example.
But there's some great examples of that in so the All Blacks, for instance, is a team that if you watch any of the YouTube videos about, there was a video from one of their captains a few years ago, and he said after each match we sit in the changing room and we give each other feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit, you listen, you receive the feedback, you understand it, you might ask clarifying questions.
Yeah.
But you sit and receive feedback because everybody in the group wants to improve.
Yeah.
Not trying to it's coming from a place of love, the place of we want to improve as a team.
Yeah.
And so Formula One is another one as well. I saw David Coulson speak not so long ago, and he was talking about where at the end of a Formula One, in the evening before they go out and party or anything, the whole team sits down.
Yeah.
And they go round, the engineers, the management, the drivers, the pit crew, and they all give feedback on their performance, what they could have done better, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they all, no one is defensive. No one's saying, well, I could, but the reason I did that was this. They say to the driver, that first corner on the 30th lap, you could have taken it like this. Yeah, you're right. That's good feedback. Thank you. So, they want, because they all want to improve. And the feedback isn't coming from a place of hate. It's coming from a place of love.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important point as well. And I guess, because as we kind of coming to a bit of an end on this, and I think there's much more we could talk about on this, but going and asking for feedback as a leader is so, so important. Going and asking your team, what could I do better? How could I improve as a manager? How could I serve you better as your leader?
Yeah.
What sort of things could we improve in the business?
Yeah.
Going and seeking regular feedback will improve you and your business.
Yeah. Actually, while you talk about it, Neil, I'm just thinking, one of the things I've always experienced that this is most effective is don't make this a long conversation, right? It can be quite, I don't mean sharp and short, but it can be very specific, right? You don't need to put loads of flowers and bells and whistles and all on it, right? Talk about what you need to talk about. The other thing I would say is always thank someone at the end of that conversation, right? Thank you for the attention. Thank you for the conversation, and ask them if they've got any other suggestions. Is there anything else you think that we need to cover here that would help this be a better situation? Because I think that's always good. You're giving back to them, so it's not you throwing things at them. It's a conversation and it's an exchange. But you brought forward the fact you noticed something. I noticed you're doing that really well. Maybe you could help share some of that with the team because you seem to be pretty good at closing deals or whatever. But then say to them, how do you think we could use that better? I think always bring them back into that, not to flower it up and not to make the sandwich, but don't miss the opportunity.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's kind of almost closing the container on the feedback. Open it up, ask, is it okay?
Yep.
Talk about the feedback, get the clarification around the feedback, then close it off by, okay, so what can you take away from this? What could we do? How could you develop this?
Perfect.
So we talked about why it's important. It's important to your business. It's important to developing you. We've talked about when to do it, and there's lots of different times and scenarios for that, but make sure the person's ready to receive it.
Yeah.
And how, and there are different ways of engaging with the how, but getting that permission is probably the most important. Any final thoughts from you on this one?
Yeah, just something that might stay in people's minds. So what Neil's talked about there is receiving it and giving it. Think about a pull and push, right? Push is you giving feedback to somebody. Pull, never forget the opportunity to pull. Go and ask for feedback. You could be a better leader tomorrow than you were today, based on something someone told you that you may never have noticed. Now, look, great topic, and we could probably go for a bit more, but we did want to come and do this. I hope it's been effective for people. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Albert. Great to talk to you. Great session. My feedback to you today is great feedback. Great session, mate. Well done. I want to thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. See you next time. Thanks, mate. All the best. Speak to you later. Bye-bye. Cheers. Take care.